Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the long delayed and much anticipated return of Ask Eddie and Anne and Charlotte, who is front and center and has been very adamant about wanting us to resume this because she gets her moment of fame here. Look at that cat. She is just something. Okay. Anne, how are you?
I'm good. Probably as people know from my Facebook, I had a horrible sinus infection and I'm just so happy to be well again.
Yes, well, you look fabulous, none the worse for wear, and I'm glad that that is over with. And it has been a little while. We'll see if we're out of practice here, or if we just pick up right where we left off. So I guess we're going to find out.
Okay.
And I have a funny feeling that some of these questions are going to feel, at least to me, a little out of date now. But you know, they're never actually out of date. I just tend to know what, sometimes when I see people ask certain questions, I know, like, oh, well, that was inspired by whatever, you know, something that was happening right then, or something I maybe showed on at a festival or on Noir Alley or something. So I'm betting we'll see a few of those.
Okay. First up, what will happen to the foundation, its mission, Noir City Festivals, etc., post Eddie? Who will fill the chasm? Is there
yes, the chasm.
Is there a line of succession, a current grooming of younger folks to take over the reins and move the foundation forward in the latter half of the 21st century? And this is from Gordon.
Wow, Gordon. Okay. Gordon is thinking about the latter half of the 21st century. I can't even think about next week. So, but honestly, it's something that I do, that I have to think about more now than I have previously. I mean, the chasm that will exist post Eddie. I mean, honestly, my job is to, at least I consider my job to be ensuring that younger people maintain an appreciation for all this stuff, not just film noir, but, you know, 20th century American history and cinema. So yes, I am always on the lookout for bright young people. You know, it's tricky to say you're grooming someone for that, because that I don't have that person specifically in mind, although I am thinking about it a lot more often these days. So I mean, that's all I can really say to that effect, although I bristle at when he says, is there a line of succession, because I started watching Succession and it's like, yeah, that show is like a 20-car pileup where you're praying there are no survivors. that's what I look at that show. I don't think I'm going to get through the first season because everybody makes me so mad. Yeah. And anyway, that's it. Throwing in a random Succession comment there. I almost encountered Brian Cox at TCM.
Oh, he's going
to be a guest programmer on TCM, and he arrived very, very late the day that I was shooting some stuff there. And like a scene out of Succession, our cars sort of, I was leaving the parking lot and he was arriving at the parking lot and stepped out, and he like waved acknowledgement. You know, Ben told me later that he is a huge fan of Turner Classic Movies and knows all the hosts and was comparing notes and all this stuff. So that's kind of cool. Have you ever seen that show? Have you watched Succession?
No, I don't watch a lot of stuff. I mean, I think the only thing that I'm really going to be watching is both Barry and Better Call Saul are coming out soon. Better than that, no, it just didn't seem like my cup of tea.
If it was Dutch, you'd watch it. right?
Danish.
It was Danish. It was a Danish. It was a Danish show. You'd watch it, but
yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of one of those things too, where I'm not really that into sort of like rich people. I find, frankly, I don't like rich people. I get that from my dad, so I don't have a lot of interest in.
I understand, and
stuff.
it's like, and it's tricky when there's a show where everybody's rotten in episode 1 and they remain rotten through the entire thing. It's like, wow, not too many character arcs in this show. It's just like who hates who and how are they going to undermine them, and so yeah, it's like real life, but. As much as I enjoy watching Brian Cox on screen, I'm probably not going to finish that show.
Yeah, the first Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, exactly. From the Michael Mann film, which was Manhunter, right? Manhunter was the one. Yeah.
Based on Red Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I successfully avoided answering that question, I think. So let's move on to number 2. Shall I read the question?
Let's go. Either.
Craig from Carlsbad said he'd like to hear my opinions on Miss Totter. I'm assuming he is referring to Audrey Totter. If I'm not mistaken, I believe she lived into her mid-90s. I wonder if you ever had the opportunity to interview her for any of your books or articles. Did she ever make any guest appearances at your noir festivals? Craig needs to get a copy of Dark City Dames. But wait, Craig, for a new edition will be out at some point. You don't have to pay the astronomical prices the used copies are fetching these days. None of that money I see, so please wait for the revised edition. But yes, Audrey was a friend. She became a very good friend of mine when I was working on that book, and she was wonderful. She was nothing at all like the characters she played on screen. She was just very, very sweet and down to earth. And, she said, it's just my Scandinavian roots. I'm just a very sensible, common sense person. And, I have no juicy dirt to give you for your book, Eddie, and blah, blah, blah. But she did have great stories to tell. So that was great fun. And she did appear several times at the earliest festivals we did in Hollywood. I know she appeared with Tension, and she came out for something else. I'm trying to remember what it was, but she did it. We showed Under the Gun, which is a pretty rare Universal noir with Richard Conte, where rare because Audrey is a brunette in that film. But one interesting thing that was happening about the time I knew her was that she was actually up for the part at that point that Gloria Stewart got in Titanic. Because they were basically looking at every elderly actress in Hollywood at that point for that role. And Audrey was very close to getting that part, but Gloria Stewart ended up being the one that Jim Cameron cast. I thought that was kind of she was still kind of like, damn it, could have had that part, Anyway, it was I really loved her. She was just delightful.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're going to be re-releasing Dark City Dames, because I really love that book. I actually got mine secondhand at a bookstore in Berkeley, and it was really funny because it's like, oh wow, Eddie wrote this, and I grabbed it because I had no idea you had written that book. Anyway, good book.
Thank you. I like that book very much. It was that was a very meaningful book, and I probably learned more writing that book than any other one that I have done, because it was such a great opportunity to personally interview and get to know the 6 actresses that I wrote about. And that's why you know, people always said to me, you know, was Gloria Grahame in that book? Did you do anything about so-and-so? And it was like, no, the point was they had to be alive. They had to talk to me. So that, and that's sort of what made the book very special.
Yeah, and I just like the way too it's sort of divided into the first half and second half. And the first half is sort of about their Hollywood years and careers and stuff. And the second half was sort of like what happened after, you know. And I thought that was just really interesting, and just in the range of their experiences in life, if they had kind of more happy lives or unhappy lives, and you know what. It's kind of, in a way, it's sort of philosophical, because you realize how much your attitude towards life sort of shapes your reality.
Anyway, I wanted to give a shout out to Judith Regan, because she was the publisher of that book. And I said, you know, I want to do something different with this, and that I don't want this just to be about women who were glamorous Hollywood stars. I want it to be a book about what happens to them when you know, their expiration date arrives in Hollywood. And she was great with that. She was very encouraging. I sense that Judith may have felt she had an expiration date as well, you know, because that's sort of the way the culture works. And I found that, you know, the stories were so much more compelling in the second half of these women's lives than they were in the first half. Is very glitzy and glamorous, and like you're thrown into this whirlwind of Hollywood movie making, and there's all these great guest stars, you know, Robert Mitchum and Ray Milland and Oscar Levant and Otto Preminger, and it's all very exciting. And then Hollywood decides we've had enough of you. And so what did these women do with the rest of their lives, you know? Anyway, I should stop talking about the book, because it's not available right now, and it's very, very expensive if you do want to buy it. But I have every intention in the world of bringing out a new edition of that book.
And this is from Michael from Post Falls, Idaho. Just watched PRC's Apology for Murder, starring Anne Savage, just before she made Detour. Since he interviewed Anne for his book, Dark City Dames, does Eddie have any tidbits she might have shared with him about the making of this knockoff of Double Indemnity?
Well, I know that there's a theory that it was called Single Indemnity, which is not true. That was just the joke, because people who saw it laughed and said they should have called it Single Indemnity, because it was such a obvious knockoff of Billy Wilder's movie. But Anne was just, no, she didn't have too many specific recollections about making the movie. I mean, you have to remember that those films, she remembered everything about making Detour, but because that would become her signature film. And so I think she forced herself to remember a lot of stuff over time, but she didn't remember that much about Apology for Murder. We even showed it. At that point, there was just a 16 millimeter print was all we could find. And we showed it and had Anne as the guest. And honestly, where screenings of Detour were a huge triumph, and Anne and I would go on tour with Detour, and she could talk about everything to do with that film. Apology for Murder was different. She just, you know, she remembered Hugh Beaumont was a good guy. But beyond that, she didn't have too many recollections of making the film. It was done so quickly. But she did remember that it opened, I forget the theater, on Hollywood Boulevard around Christmas time. And she was very excited about it. And then Paramount actually kind of shut it down, because they said, you plagiarized our film. And that was very hurtful to her, because, you know, she's good in the movie. It's not like a Detour level character, but she's good in the film. But she was just very upset because nothing really happened with it, because Paramount did kind of threaten a lawsuit. at one point, and then it's a B movie, and the film just kind of disappeared. And I don't know that it's ever really had a comeback. We should look into it. I wonder if that's something that we could actually find some elements for that and perhaps restore it. Well, it's a possibility. Okay. Steve in Exeter, New Hampshire, was watching Not as a Stranger from 1955. And there's a scene where medical student Robert Mitchum is out on a date with nurse Olivia de Havilland. Yeah, that's a good date. And they went to the movies. Outside the theater are two posters, one for The Barefoot Contessa and the other for Wicked Woman. And yes, Steve, I agree with your assessment. What a night at the movies. So I think if it was tonight and Steve saying he was at the theater, he'd choose to watch Wicked Woman, maybe for no other reason than Bad Girl Beverly Michaels. Better suits my post-2020 state of mind. Post-2022 state of mind. We're still in 2022. Okay, so Steve wants to know which of these movies we would choose if you could choose only one and it were tonight. Okay, but I'll do that, Steve, but I'm kind of curious why you think we have to watch one or the other, because that was a double bill at the time, right? You got to see both The Barefoot Contessa and Wicked Woman. But Anne, you go first because I know what you're going to say.
Wicked Woman.
Yeah, of course.
I love it. I love Wicked Woman. It's just so much fun. She's just so, because she's sort of like, kind of like a siren. I mean, she's sexy and stuff and she's seducing people, but she's also just like really basic, like very like, I just like, my favorite scene is just like when she's like just sitting in her chair with her feet propped up, having a beer and reading like, a scandal rag or something like that. And it's just so great because you just didn't see women doing that in films. Not you would have maybe a character actor or a side character doing that, but not the lead or not the seductress. Exactly.
I mean, that's a scene you often see in films with the guys, sitting around their apartment, like Van Heflin in The Prowler, or somebody just pointed this out the other day, like Dirk Bogarde. I showed a movie on TCM, Cast a Dark Shadow, where he's sitting around reading like some magazine, and it was not uncommon for the guys to just lounge around and read a magazine, but it was rare to see women doing that. It's also really interesting because I love that double bill, because it's like, a picture, complete top of the line, Joseph Mankiewicz screenplay, direction, Bogart, Ava Gardner, Edmund O'Brien in his Oscar-winning role, and then it's on a double bill with really one of the more tawdry films of the era, where I'm sure that the entire budget of Wicked Woman was a portion of Ava Gardner's salary for The Barefoot Contessa. But yeah, I would choose Wicked Woman too, probably. I never really tire of watching it, and I've shown it a million times because it's such an audience favorite. People love that movie, and I never really get tired of watching it. Whenever I do it at a film festival, I always think, okay, I'm going to just watch the beginning because I want to hear the goofy title song sung by Herb Jeffries. And then it's like, and then I'm going to go out and get something to eat. And then like 90 minutes later, I'm still watching the movie. So it does have a very interesting spell that it casts. No offense to The Barefoot Contessa, which also has Valentina Corteza in it, in addition to those others. And it's a good film, but honestly, I can't even remember the last time I saw The Barefoot Contessa, which I may have to revisit it now. Right? Have you seen it?
Like I need to watch it again. Like it's been decades.
Yeah, and I honestly can't remember if it's good or not. I mean, it's one of those films that like I saw it a long time ago on TV, and like, yeah, this needs a revisit. I know that it's kind of Mankiewicz's take on the career of Rita Hayworth.
Yeah.
And other European, sex bomb actresses, that he kind of decided this would make a great idea for a movie. And it could definitely go on like a double bill with The Bad and the Beautiful, because they're both kind of remembrances of the careers of these people. And so yeah, there you go. Thanks Steve in Exeter, New Hampshire, because now I'm probably gonna go look for The Barefoot Contessa and probably watch it again.
Okay, so this is from Kathy. Did Eddie like being the Ricardos? Lucy really sweated out McCarthy. Eddie had so many intros and outros about actors, directors, and writers falling victim to the HUAC.
I haven't seen it. I'm confessing, I have not seen that movie because I have a hard time with Hollywood biopic kind of things, because you do a lot of research, and this is kind of my wheelhouse, not specifically Lucille Ball, but that era. And I seize up sometimes. Like I couldn't watch Feud, right? The Whatever Happened to Baby Jane movie, because I knew I was just gonna be totally bugged by it. Even if it was quote unquote good, I'd still be bothered by it, because it's like, well, this didn't happen, and that's not really what Robert Aldrich was like, and and so I'm afraid I'd have the same feeling. I definitely had that feeling watching Mank, which I had a lot of trouble with, because it was just like, ooh, this isn't right. Ooh, boy, there was never a situation in which all these famous writers would be in the same room at the same studio. Like, that's wrong. And even though I understand artistic license, it is a difficult watch for me when I see them playing so loosely with history. And partly that's because then younger people accept it as the truth. Like I like all those movies that came out a few years ago about Alfred Hitchcock, right? And where Anthony Hopkins played him making Psycho. And then I watched that film in a theater with a bunch of young people, and it kind of made me sick, because they were like, oh, this guy was a gross perv, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, he's the most important filmmaker of the 20th century, really, and like, that's what you're taking away from this, is he was like a gross perv. And so I'm always afraid with these Hollywood biopics that I'm going to have that kind of reaction. No. Did you see the movie? Did you see Being the Ricardos?
I kind of have this, yeah, I couldn't get enthusiastic about it, to tell you the truth. I mean, one, because I know enough about the problems they had in their marriage. It wasn't particularly something I wanted to see because of that. I just don't like things about adultery. So, and that's kind of would be impossible to tell the story.
And what are you doing? What are you doing in the Film Noir Foundation if that's a hot button subject? Because that's like a core component of film noir.
But in film noir, it's it's sort of like, I get upset about reading about violence in real life, but I like horror films. There, you know what I mean?
Okay, I get you.
It doesn't have the emotional charge.
Sure.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. David from Queens wants to know what would or could have happened to Gloria Grahame's career had she not ignored her health and had not passed away at such an early age. Do you think she was? Do you think she'd be able to resurrect her career, or would she have been able to transform her talent into another age? I don't really know. It's tough, to go back to what I was saying about the actresses that I profiled for Dark City Dames. I mean, it really is tough when you're an actress like Gloria Grahame, who is sort of known for her sex appeal, and then as you get older, nobody wants to see you anymore, right, on screen, because you no longer have that same appeal. I think it's easier for actresses now to age in films a little more gracefully. But I know Grahame was doing it, you know, she made Chilly Scenes of Winter, was one of the last pictures she made, and she's really good in it. But you know, I honestly don't know what would have happened. And I don't know that she ignored her health so much as she tried alternative forms of dealing with her problems that I think she might have had more success with those holistic methods and things today than back then, because there weren't that many people who really knew what they were doing, right? And I don't know, maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. I wish that Dana Delaney was here to deal with this question, because you know, Dana wrote that great story about Gloria Grahame in the Noir City magazine, and she has a lot more insights into Gloria Grahame's character. She did actually meet Gloria Grahame briefly in New York when Dana was just starting out, and you know, she may have better insights on that than me. So, but of course, Dana's not here. So
She is not.
she is not here. I'm sorry, she's not here. If she was, she'd be sitting right here next to me, but she's not. So, but I'll ask her about that, because that's, you know, it's an interesting question.
Okay, and this one is from David from Wayne, Pennsylvania. My wife Bonnie and I greatly enjoyed the Noir Alley presentation of The Unsuspected, especially with all of Eddie's shimmering trimmings. Is it fair to also observe that The Unsuspected owes something to Wilkie Collins' mystery novel, The Woman in White? We would welcome your comments on the 1948 film, The Woman in White, with Sidney Greenstreet, Eleanor Parker, Alexis Smith, Agnes Moorehead, and Gig Young.
Okay, boy, do I feel stupid. You know, I've never seen that movie. I've never seen The Woman in White, the film.
It's a good adaptation of the novel.
Okay, well, this one, God bless you, Anne. You've seen it, so tell me about it and answer David's question. You know, it's funny, when I saw this written down, I thought it said it's an adaptation of the film with Sidney Greenstreet, Eleanor Parker, Alexis Smith, Agnes Moorehead, Gig Young, and David Wayne, because it said David Wayne, Pennsylvania. So it's David from Wayne, Pennsylvania, where I have been. I've been to Wayne, Pennsylvania, David. I want you to know that. But in fact, David Wayne is not in the movie. But what was your take on the film?
Well, I mean, I think probably The Woman in White, the bad guy in that kind of set a type of character, the sort of manipulative bad guy who's also sort of charismatic, which, I mean, I'm sure was, you know, an influence on The Unsuspected. I would argue it's an influence on the Hannibal novels too. I mean, he was just sort of one of the earliest of that type from Wilkie Collins' novel. The movie Woman in White's good too. It kind of would have been, Sidney Greenstreet's really good in it. I mean, it's a type of role that he's never gotten to read. That was a very unique role for him, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And he's very good in it. It would have been kind of fun though. I would have liked to see Claude Rains play that character. That would have been interesting. Hell, I would have liked to see Claude Rains play Hannibal Lecter. That would have been
well, wow,
really amazing.
Okay. And that was, I can't remember who directed the movie, nor can I remember when the book was written. The book, do you remember? Yeah. Yeah,
it's a 19th century novel. It's the Victorian period. Wilkie Collins was a contemporary of Charles Dickens. They're actually good friends. They put on plays together, amateur plays.
Yeah. because I know it, and it's like a gap in my knowledge, because I know that The Woman in White was, a very significant mystery novel in the history of the genre, but I never read it, and I haven't seen the movie. So this is a big gap for me. But hey, it's a good cast. It's a great cast for a film. So I'm definitely going to look for it and watch it, and I'll report back.
Yeah, and if you're going to read Wilkie Collins, you should also read The Moonstone, which is
Right.
also
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that. Now I have homework, damn it. in the midst of everything else. Okay. It's funny. The next question from Megan in Hanover, Indiana, also involves the Unsuspected. I've thought a lot about film noir and box office stars since you showed the Unsuspected on Noir Alley and shared that Dana Andrews was wanted for a role. For me, the film is wonderful, but Andrews would have added his special something to it. Are there other noir films that box office stars were wanted for but were unavailable or turned the roles down? Holy cow. Yes, many. Sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt, because when you look, if you are lucky enough to access the production files on a lot of these movies, you will see very early on in the planning stages, they always have casting lists of every character and who the producer and director want for roles. And you have to take these with a grain of salt, because it does not mean the part was offered to them or that there were any negotiations. It's just like brainstorming, right? I mean, people now have seen recently, like Francis Coppola's casting list for The Godfather, and like all of the people he had considered for every role. And then of course, what happens historically is somebody gets the part, they make it famous, like Al Pacino. And no, this is no offense to Francis Coppola at all, but then he says, Al was always my first choice. I couldn't imagine anybody else in the part but Al. Yeah. But there's a list of like 14 people, for the part. So he may very well be telling the truth, that that's the only person he really, really, truly wanted. But the way the business works, I mean, Paramount didn't want Al Pacino, but there's all kinds of examples of this, during the heyday of film noir. I think like John Garfield was like on a lot of casting lists for movies. Like I know that he was, originally, well, sorry to be so involuted with this explanation, but a lot of times a film gets derailed from what it's originally hoped to be. So the budget will get cut or something will change. But case in point, Too Late for Tears, right? When Hans Stromberg decided he was going to make that movie, he thought it was going to have a much, much bigger budget than it eventually had. So Joan Crawford was going to play the Elizabeth Scott role, and Kirk Douglas was going to play the Dan Duryea role. But the budget got slashed and they went ahead and made the film, and then they got Liz Scott and Dan Duryea instead. And now it's like Liz Scott's signature role, but it could have been a Joan Crawford part, right? John Garfield was originally talked about, for Detour. Like John Garfield and Susan Hayward were talked about for Detour. Veronica Lake was considered for Gun Crazy, for the Peggy Cummins role in Gun Crazy, but was the King brothers were talked out of signing her up because they were told that she had problems, that she had substance abuse problems, and they would be making a mistake to use her on a film that, they shot fast and hard. and it's like, Veronica may not be able to keep up with you guys. So you should look elsewhere. And now that's Peggy Cummins' signature role, right? So there's a lot of examples of this. do you have any that you're aware of that were particularly like, can you imagine if that person was in the film instead?
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where I know that the casting had changed. I mean, I'm more of the type of person that will think of things like that, like, oh, it would have been cool if so-and-so had done this. But it's just, but the thing that popped in my head when we started this question was just, when some people actually write parts though with someone in mind, because I was thinking about, Preston Sturgis did that with the Lady Eve. He wrote that for Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't imagine anyone else if he had to cast somebody else, so that film would have worked.
I completely agree. And it's funny that Megan is talking about this in relation to Dana Andrews. It's very interesting to know, for example, one of the most beloved films, mystery movie or noir, whatever you want to call it, of course, is Laura, right? And it's fascinating to know that Dana Andrews was not the original choice for that part, right? Otto Preminger wanted him, but Daryl Zanuck wanted John Hodiak for that role. And I know. And he didn't want Gene Tierney as Laura. He wanted Jennifer Jones as Laura. And Waldo Lydecker wasn't going to be played by Clifton Webb. He was going to be played by Laird Krieger. And all I can say,
I would have been okay with Laird Krieger, frankly, but
yes, but no.
Yeah,
but no,
maybe
because
not.
Come on, Clifton Webb is so fantastic in that movie that Laird Krieger would have made it. Honestly, as sophisticated an actor as he was, he would have made it. It would have tilted towards being more like a horror film, which is what Laird Krieger did. The Lodger and Hangover Square and those things. Even I Wake Up Screaming is like a horror movie when he's on screen. And, Clifton Webb was perfect. And to Clifton Webb opposite Dana Andrews is like nirvana. Those two guys in a scene together are just so perfect that I can't think of anybody else. But it is fun to note like what the original ideas were.
And I also really love Clifton Webb and Vincent Price too. Their scenes together are so fantastic. They're so great together.
Well, that whole movie is so beautifully cast, and that's all Otto Preminger. I mean, he made all those decisions, and they were all correct. They were all 100% right on.
Okay, wait.
Number 9.
Okay. This is from Ed. Since I became interested in noir several years ago, I've noticed several noirs deal with the topic of police corruption or excessive police force. Was this a reflection of actual cases at those times? Did the film industry face pushback from police departments for these portrayals that prompted censorship?
Interesting question, but while it was that became a prevalent theme in film noir, it was not that prevalent in the movies as a whole. So it never really became an issue. And in a lot of cases, the films that you would think, my God, did the cops even read the script? There was no issue. Like on Dangerous Ground, Nick Ray and Buzz Bizzarides did drive-arounds with the cops, to soak up the feel of being a big city cop. It wasn't in LA, it was on the East Coast, but the police were, and that's another thing, like in a movie like The Prowler, you'll notice that the way they get around it is they just don't name the city. I mean, The Prowler is so obviously Los Angeles, but you will notice that the prowl cars have no city insignia on them at all. It's just a generic police a roller. And that was how they got around this stuff. Whenever there was a discussion of police corruption or civic corruption, they would make it an unnamed city. So that's why you see, like, where is the asphalt jungle actually set? No, nobody's exactly sure what city that is. Is it St. Louis? Is it Cleveland? I mean, where is it set? And the same is true of the Prowler and the Turning Point, which I just showed recently for the first time on TCM, is clearly Los Angeles, but they say it's a Midwestern city. It's like, well, Angel's Flight is not in a Midwestern city. I mean, it's clearly LA, but they just got around it by not naming the city. And in a lot of cases, the cop, like, Elroy, James Elroy really hit this nail on the head with LA Confidential, where he showed how the cops sort of, they love this attention, and cops love Elroy. And he's like an honorary member of the LAPD, and his books are just filled with dirty cops. And the cops don't really seem to mind, because the stories are basically saying, this is how hard it is to be a cop, and these are the pitfalls of being a cop. So they relate to it, even if they're not always depicted as heroic. I think that, and going forward in time, you ended up getting guys like Joe Wambaugh, who was an LA cop, who wrote the most scurrilous books about cops, the Choir Boys and stuff like that. I mean, those were not books that made the police look good, and they were written by one of their own. So I don't think the police, let me put it this way, the police have other things to worry about than the way they're depicted in movies. I'll just say that. Okay. Do you consider, this is from Jamie, do you consider the lineup a more unique film noir than the typical noir made in the late 40s and 50s? Well, it is a late 50s film. If so, what do you attribute to its being more unique than other noirs of the period? Jamie wants to know, was it a B film? And what's the opinion of the actors' performances, particularly Eli Wallach and Robert Keith? Jamie asks this question. Anne, do you have any strong feeling about the lineup one way or the other?
Oh, I really like it. I mean, if nothing else, you get to see the Sutro baths when they were still functioning, which is, someone's lived in San Francisco is very cool for me. Location work really is great. It's got a real edge to it, that you don't see in a lot of noirs. I mean, there's something really, maybe not a lot. It's different. There's just something different about it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a film noir, right? Because it's very bright. The whole thing takes place in the daytime. It's interesting to kind of dovetail with the last question. That film was based on a TV series, The Lineup, that was about the cops. But the cops have very little to do with the movie. Yeah. I mean, the movie is about the villains. And that's really what makes it a noir, in my opinion, is those characters. Dancer, played by Eli Wallach, and Julian, played by Robert Keith. They're tremendous. And I think their performances are great. And Richard Jekyll is also great as the rather callow young driver they have for their day tour of San Francisco. But when Don Siegel made that movie in San Francisco, the cops loved him. Because one thing you have to know about the police department is, if you're making a movie in a city, you have to have the police involved to cordon off streets and to do everything for you. And if you treat those cops well, they will love you, right? And so Don Siegel loved the police, and they had no problem with the movie at all. And then, of course, when he came back years later to make Dirty Harry in San Francisco, he was like the conquering hero. The same guys were still on the police force who were there when he shot the lineup, and they loved him, you know. And then he came back again with Eastwood to make Escape from Alcatraz. And so it pays to get along with the cops, you know. And yeah, I think the lineup is really, it holds up really, really well. And it's so beautifully edited. And, you know, Eli Wallach did not want to make the movie because he thought it was a B film and that it was just like an action picture. And like, why is a great stage actor like me from New York, you know, who's worked with Kazan and, you know, what am I doing in this picture? And then he got there on location and he really liked Don Siegel. And Don Siegel, despite being considered an action director, is a really good actor's director. And you know, Wallach ended up loving the character and just, you know, he's sensational in the movie, absolutely fantastic. And that film, for a really simple movie, it has so much going on and so much subtext and everything. I can't say it's a masterpiece because they should have just cut out the cops altogether. And then it might have been a masterpiece because those scenes are unnecessary, you know. And Emil Meyer and Warner Anderson don't bring a lot to the film. And it's just like, can we get back to the killers? Can we go back to those guys, please? So yeah, I greatly enjoy that movie. Boy, when I showed it on TCM, the reaction, I was surprised how many people had not seen the movie. And the reaction was overwhelmingly positive.
Okay, and this one is from our friend Martin from the Netherlands. Could you give me your opinions on two British noirs, Hell Drivers and Hell is a City, both starring Stanley Baker? And why does it seem as if the British started to make such gritty movies in the early 60s? Less censorship?
Huh, interesting. Martin always asks good questions. Yes, I've seen these movies, Stanley Baker pictures. There are more good Stanley Baker movies, crime movies. The Criminal, in fact, is a really good picture that Stanley Baker did with Joseph Losey. And you know, I don't know exactly if you can put your finger on why the Brits started making more of those, except that you know, British kitchen sink dramas became a thing, and like the working class, British working class stories became a huge thing. So obviously there's a parallel with crime films, and I like both of these movies. I love Hell Drivers. I just think Hell Drivers is an absolutely fantastic movie about you know, it's one of those films like I'm just going to say Force of Evil off the top of my head. It's a crime picture that's about a lot more than what's on the surface, because that's basically a film about the dangers of capitalism run amok and how it, like, they drive the workers to compete with each other and everything turns bad and dangerous. And it's like Blue Collar. Hell Drivers and Blue Collar, Paul Schrader's Blue Collar, would be a really interesting double bill. And of course, Hell Drivers has everybody is in it, right? Stanley Baker and Herbert Lom and come on, who am I? Patrick McGowan, Sean Connery, David McCallum, Peggy Cummins, Jill Ireland, all these people who were about to break big, right? Like Connery and McGowan. And you know, McGowan dominates the movie. He's the villain, Red, who's like the badass truck driver, and he is just spectacular in the film. So yeah, it's a great picture. And Hell is a City is, you know, Val Guest made all kinds of different movies, but he made, because I love you know, the Quatermass picture he did, Quatermass in the Pit.
Yeah.
Right. Is just fantastic. And he did comedies and all. He was a very versatile director, but he did do some good noir stuff. The Weapon is a very little seen movie that he did that I like. And of course this picture, Hell is a City, is really good. It's kind of like I don't know, it's setting the stage for movies like 10, 12 years later, like Get Carter and stuff like that. This is an early example of something like that. So I like them.
Your turn.
Oh, my turn. Have you ever screened the Brit Noir? I see Brit Noir is a thing now. They Made Me a Fugitive. Does it live up to your standards for noteworthy film noir? Asks Alan in Long Beach, California. Anne, have you seen They Made Me a Fugitive?
No, I have not.
I have seen the film, and I like the film. I don't think it's a great film, but if you were doing an all British series of noir, it's an essential. You would have to include it on the list. But I'm going to be honest and say that it's been 20 years at least since I've seen it. I remember seeing it at a very small screening in San Francisco, probably 20 years ago. And don't ask me to recall it in detail because I can't do it. But I know that it historically has a place in the history of British crime cinema. That's about as good as I can do on that one for the moment.
Okay. And this one's from John, a Noir Foundation Kingpin from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Thank you for your generosity. I know that you think that John Alton is the quintessential Noir cinematographer. Alton had an amazing 3-year burst from 1947 to 1949. Do you have a favorite John Alton film that exemplifies his work? And I'll just let you answer that.
Well, there are a few. I would say, I'm trying to think of like it's not An American in Paris. Because you know that Alton shot the big ballet sequence,
yeah.
the climactic sequence in An American in Paris, because there was so much spectacular visual stuff going on. And it won the Oscar. And that's the Oscar that he won, and he never got it.
Yeah.
Because he had to share it. I can't remember, Arthur Lang or somebody was the other cinematographer. But I guess I would say I'm going to name two. Raw Deal is just like perfection from beginning to end. Every shot in that movie is like a paperback book cover or something. I mean, it's just extraordinary. But the lesser known Alton that I love is The Spiritualist with Sharon Bay. Yeah. And Lynn Barry and Kathy O'Donnell. And I love it because it's a B movie. It's clearly a B movie, but it is so beautifully photographed. And very early on in the noir scheme of things, I showed that film at a festival in LA, and Sharon Bay happened to be in Los Angeles at the time. And because he spent half of his time in Austria and half in Los Angeles. And so he was in LA, and we invited him to the screening. And I never spoken to an actor who was so knowledgeable about the work of the cinematographer and who lauded the cinematographer the way he did on this picture. Because he just said, you know, Jack Alton was just a genius. He was just a master. And not just because there were cinematographers who could get these amazing effects, like Stanley Cortez. But Stanley Cortez would get fired from pictures because it took him so long to do the setups. Alton was the opposite. He was incredibly fast, and he would scheme out the whole thing in advance. And then knowing that his alacrity with this stuff was doing everybody a favor, because he was saving them money, time and money, which when you're making a B film, that's what it's all about. So Alton would have the entire set rigged or gaffed already. And then the director would just say, okay, we're moving on to this thing. And he would just switch certain lights off and flick other lights on, and they were ready for the next setup. And he had it all blocked out, like we're moving to this close up, boom, boom, boom. And he'd have the lights would be preset to do all of this. And it just saved so much time. And I remember Mr. Bay saying, you know, it's incredibly helpful to an actor to not to get into a part and you're on the set and you don't have to leave the set and go to your trailer and wait for an hour for the next shot, because it's like ready to go. So you keep the vibe, you stay in character, and you just keep working. And he said it was the most miraculous thing was how adept this guy was moving between shots on the set. That was Alton's real, besides having just great shots. And obviously, you know, the secret to his style is he uses very few lights, right? He uses, you know, he stages things with practicals, which are lights that actually exist within the world of the movie, as opposed to external lights that you're using to fill in and light stuff. And you're wondering, like, where's that light coming from? You know, Alton was really good managing the balance between the two, which is why you see a lot of lamps in his stuff, and people will suddenly be talking and they'll move closer to the lamp because they're getting this great under, like this right now, they're getting this light from the side or something, but the lamp is actually there. And then he can trick you. Once he establishes that, he'll trick you by putting the light somewhere else or moving it slightly to keep the effect, even though the practicality of it is now gone, right? Because spatially it's not believable anymore, but he tricks you into believing it. That's kind of the genius of John Alton. All right, there. I went off on John Alton there. Okay.
Yeah, that works for me. I'm fascinated by him.
Okay. Okay. So this question says, and this question kind of hurts me a little bit. I got to say, this hurts me a little bit. Why is the film The Prowler so hard to find, and why is it not more widely known? Mike's DVD and Blu-ray collection and Patrick would like to know. Well, of course, The Prowler was the first film that the Film Noir Foundation restored, and we did put it out on a DVD through VCI Entertainment, and then we put it out, or then they put it out on a Blu-ray, and then it went out of print and VCI went out of business. So we are hoping to do that again, although, you know, we are not the rights holder on that movie. And I'm hoping that a fair and equitable deal can be reached, because what happens is when we first restored that movie, nobody knew anything about it and nobody cared. And now it's 20 years later, and it's like, now you can give us a lot of money if you want to put that movie out. And it's like, wow, really, you know? So it's, these things can get a little tricky, but hey, I know that we're recording this, Anne, just prior to the opening of the Noir City Film Festival here in the Bay Area. And we are showing The Prowler at that festival. And, you know, what goes around comes around. It may be time for a Prowler revival pretty soon, but I'm very proud to say that's the film that got the Film Noir Foundation out of the gate.
And also it's going to be playing at Hollywood, which is in April.
Yes, at the Hollywood Festival from the April 15th to the 17th, the Prowler will also be playing there on the big screen. And it will be our 35mm restoration will be shown. So I know that doesn't help your Blu-ray collection at all there, Mike or Pat or whoever asked the question, but we're working on it.
Okay, Often at past SIF Noir City presentations in Seattle, Eddie has asked an audience member to come up on stage and play Name That Noir, quizzing the contestants from a famous noir. I thought it would be fun to turn the tables on the expert and play the game with him. Okay.
Okay.
In the movie The Accused, Loretta Young gets out of a truck that is stopped to pick her up on US 101 and is dramatically confronted with a huge billboard advertising the movie Murder, released by Paramount Pictures. The male and female leads of the fictitious film were contract players at Paramount and would in fact co-star a year later in another noir released by Paramount. Who were the two stars of the fake movie Murder, and what was the noir they would later star in together? And that's from Michael.
That's funny. That's it. That's now we're getting good and esoteric. Do you know this one, Ann?
I do not.
Okay. The answer is MacDonald Carey and Gail Russell, and the movie they would star in together is Joseph Losey's The Lawless. See, you didn't even know, and you put it after a question about a film made by Joseph Losey. And the answer to this is Joseph Losey's The Lawless, which is kind of funny because I think it would have been, I mean, I don't know the story behind the use of this billboard, but it would have been funny if they had just gone with the actual movie and the billboard had said The Lawless with MacDonald Carey. Because honestly, the fact that the movie's called Murder is a little on the nose for that scene, because she's just killed, her student, Douglas Dick, the actor, playing the student in the movie. And to have the billboard say Murder, I always wince a little because it is too on the nose. But if it was actually a billboard for The Lawless with MacDonald Carey and Gail Russell, that would have been pretty cool. And I would have excused Paramount for shameless self-promotion. But who knows? Maybe they didn't have a title for the movie, or that wasn't, who knows? Maybe Murder was the original title of The Lawless, and they decided to change it. I don't know. It's worth investigating. That's a fun question. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the last questions because it's noir, not lightning round, based on this one's questions.
Okay.
So Big Street.
I'm going to be super embarrassed, and I'm not even sure what Big Street is. Is that like the one with Lucille Ball? Big Street. I think it's really early, and I think it's a Damon Runyon story.
Yeah, is that the one where she's like the woman at the club that sort of?
Yeah. So obviously,
happens to her, and this guy wants to take care of her. And
it's embarrassing, but obviously, I don't know this film well enough to comment on it. So it'll be fun to see if there's yet another Lucy Noir to go along with The Dark Corner and Lured. And some people include Two Smart People in there, with a picture that she did with Jules Dassin that isn't really noir. But I'm curious because, if it's Damon Runyon, it's going to have noirish elements, but it's probably going to be Henry Fonda. Isn't Henry Fonda in Big Street with, I think Henry Fonda's in it too. Okay. So, let's move on in the lightning round because Eddie is embarrassing himself right now.
The Great Gatsby, 1949.
It's not truly a film noir, but it's proof of that film noir was a movement in Hollywood because it's very much feels like a film noir because it was made in 1949 at Paramount and John Seitz photographed it, and they make Jay Gatsby more of a gangster in that version than they make him in the book, than Fitzgerald made him in the book. I mean, there's even like a montage of his rise to power that feels like something out of the Roaring Twenties or something, so yeah, there are certainly noirish elements to it, but I have I just have a hard time calling The Great Gatsby in any way like a noir story. It's kind of more than that, really, because the crime is not the central theme. Obsession in some respect, but it's romantic obsession, and it is a story about a guy trying to attain the unattainable, and be something he's not, which you see a lot of noir, a lot of the crooks in noir, Robert Ryan, Richard Conte have played this character a million times, but it's noir stained. Gatsby, I consider noir stained.
The Web.
You've seen it, right? Because Vincent Price is in it. So I know you've seen it because you're a huge Vincent Price fan. Yeah, I consider The Web to very much be a film noir. It's got, I love this movie. I love The Web because it's Bill Bauer's script, and the wisecracks just come fast and furious, and it's great. It's like it's one of my favorite Edmund O'Brien noir films, and like people don't really know it. And Ella Raines is in it, and I'll watch anything with Ella Raines, but this is good. So yes, The Web is definitely a film noir.
The Whistler movies.
Okay, here's where you cut loose, Anne. Come on, I know you're a big fan of the Whistler movies, and there are some that are more noir than others, but
I mean, they're all pretty noirish because the radio series was very, very noir. But I think that the main one is I think they all have Richard Dix.
Yeah, Richard Dix. Richard Dix is in all of them, which is kind of fascinating. Don't you find him just so strange as a movie star? I mean, he's such a weird guy. Like, how did this guy get to be a movie star? Early Richard Dix is one thing, but then in the 40s, he is so dissolute, that he's fascinating in these movies, but it's like he's just a lost man. In all of these films, he's like this lost character who wanders into these plots.
Yeah, which I think really works for the Whistler a lot. His personality really works for that. So yeah, and I actually really recommend all of them. I was surprised, because I wasn't really sure how I was gonna, with these things, because they're low budget and those kind of things. But honestly, out of the stuff based on a radio series, like a series of films based on a radio series, I think they're the best ones.
Yeah, and there's a few Cornell Woolrich stories that they adapted in there. I think it's Mark of the Whistler or Voice of the Whistler, or maybe both of them. I know that my favorites, I think, are Power of the Whistler and Mark of the Whistler. I think are the two. There's one really good one with Janice Carter. I think that's Power of the Whistler. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's my favorite out of all of them. And but I cannot keep the title straight. So much for that. Okay. We lost you again.
Hold on. I'm coming back, I promise.
Okay.
How weird. I don't know what it is that I'm doing. There I am. I'm back. I must be touching something and knocking myself out here. I don't know.
Port of Shadows. Oh, sorry. Port of Shadows.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. The Jean Gabin film.
Yeah.
Yes, that's like the, quintessential, amour fou, French romantic, poetic realism noir. I mean, yes. There's no question about that. All you have to do is see Jean Gabin in a trench coat and a fedora in the rain, and it's like, oh my God, this is so noir. But it is. It truly is a noir film.
Was there ever a Bruce Lee film that could be considered a film noir?
I can't. That's a stretch. I mean, I guess you'd have to stretch that. I mean, and he's saying a Bruce Lee film, not a film that Bruce Lee was in.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, no, I can't see that. But he is, of course, in Marlowe, right, where James
Yep.
Garner plays Philip Marlowe. Bruce Lee destroys Marlowe's office in that movie. But you know, even that's a stretch because that film is the least noir of all the Philip Marlowe adaptations. Not a bad movie, but James Garner is clearly like Jim Rockford. He's not Philip Marlowe, you know, he's just he's too nice and avuncular and charming a guy to play Marlowe in my estimation. So that was kind of a tune-up for being Jim Rockford on TV.
Do you think any of Shakespeare's plays qualify as film noir?
Of course. I mean, qualify as film noir. I mean, what I know what that question means.
Yeah.
But are there any of Shakespeare's plays that could be adapted as a film noir? And yeah, I mean, Hamlet and Lear are real noir stories, you know.
Macbeth.
And Macbeth.
I think that's the
totally.
biggest noir.
No, Macbeth is totally a noir story. And yeah, and I think you actually, you know, this is deeper than I'm prepared to go right now, but I'm sure that there are, and our fabulous viewers can weigh in on this, but there probably have been films that have been adapted uncredited.
Oh yeah.
You know, because they're so totally noir, you know. And of course, now, you know, Joel Cohen has done Macbeth, you know, as a film noir, pretty much in black and white with Frances McDormand and the whole thing, you know. And of course, it's interesting that Othello is the play that Ronald Colman is doing in A Double Life, which is completely noir.
And there's the Brit Noir adaptation of Othello, where it's with Patrick McGowan and
yes, exactly. All Night Long.
All Night Long, yeah.
Yeah, which I love that movie. It's fantastic. So yes, Shakespeare is easily adaptable as noir. He can even be adapted to like samurai movies.
Yeah.
Because you've seen, you know, the Kurosawa, Throne of Blood, and
the McKenzie brothers movie, it's Hamlet.
Which is the
with Bob and Doug McKenzie. What's the name of it? The name.
Now you're on the spot.
Oh yeah, so it's taken from a sketch on SCTV about these two Canadian guys, they're brothers, and they just sit around and drink beer, and they have like their little TV show. Yes. And so they made like a big screen movie at it. Max von Sydow's in it, and but it's based on Hamlet. People just don't realize that.
Of course.
Know, but it's Elsinore Brewery that they go to, and they're helping this woman whose father has died recently, and she sees his ghost in the video arcade, and her uncle just married her mother.
It is pretty. It is pretty astounding, right? Strange Brew. Okay. It is pretty astounding how Shakespeare kind of just covered it all, you know, and he just understood the conflicts in these dramas, so you know, and how to relate them in the perfect structure of, you know, the storytelling structure that you know, and like Hamlet, you know, I mean, there are just bodies strewn everywhere by the time that thing ends. It's like, wow, this is probably overkill even for noir, you know. So anyway, that was a good one. Maybe we should do a whole thing in the magazine on Shakespearean noir, you know. That would be kind of interesting.
I think it'd be great because there's been a lot of it.
There has been. I mean, I'm in no condition right now to expound any further on this subject, but it is definitely it's out there for further research, definitely. Yeah. Well, Anne, it was good to get back in the saddle here and do another one of these after so long. So
yeah, so yes, here we are.
And the next time we do this, the Noir City Festival up in the Bay Area will have happened. So I'll be able to report on what that was all about. And then, as we mentioned during this broadcast, the April 15th to 17th, we'll be back in LA doing the festival at the American Legion Post 43, not far from our prior digs at the Egyptian Theater. And the Egyptian is closed right now for renovation, so we switched over to the Legion, and we'll be doing that, and then the TCM festival right after that. And holy cow, it's like things are coming, kind of getting back to I'm not quite ready to say normal yet, but as I like to say, we're re-entering Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, and the San Francisco Silent Film Festival is going to be back in person at the Castro in May, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to attend as well, and just to be there and watch movies. So yeah. I will see you there. I'll see you before that. I'll see you at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland. I hope.
And then you'll see me at TCM.
Great.
You'll see me in San Francisco again.
Fantastic. Maybe we should do one of these like on the road.
We really should.
It would be kind of fun to do one when we're actually together.
Yeah. Wow. That's a thought.
Let's think about that.
Try and figure something out.
It's not like I have a tremendous amount of free time when I'm doing the GCM festival. They work me pretty hard, but that would be great fun. If nothing else, we'll do a live version where we sit around and take questions from people who are standing in front of us. That might be amusing.
Could be fun. We could always just hang out on Hollywood Boulevard and talk to random strangers.
You don't want to do that. Trust me, you do not want to do that. Hanging out on Hollywood Boulevard with random strangers is the last thing you want to do. Okay. So I see that Charlotte has had enough. Talk of Hollywood Boulevard scared her off. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we made it. We made it through COVID and made it through her sinus infection, and we're back up and running.
Yeah, so thanks for everybody's patience. I know it's been a while since the last one, so we'll get back on track hopefully. And I don't know. I guess that's it.
There you go.
Good night.
Okay, we'll sign off with that. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.